Seattle continues to fall behind on police recruiting despite big raises and big bonuses.
Today, the police department acknowledged they've hired fewer officers than they've lost. Senior reporter Chris Daniels tells us how the gap is widened and why the issue is similar in other major western cities.
Another week, another problem.
A man tragically lost his life.
West Seattle Councilmember Rob Saka lamenting a homicide in his district.
We all have to do better.
This after a nearly 3-decade record homicide rate in the city, and Seattle police staffing hovering at lows not seen since before the city's post-grunge population boom.
So what's it going to take to change the trajectory?
Time.
Seattle Council Public Safety Chair Bob Kettle acknowledging despite big raises in base pay and $30,000 bonuses, staffing continues to lag. With 40 officer separations already this year, and even with new hires, the shortage widens. The city only projects less than 1,000 fully trained officers by year's end, about 400 less than pre-pandemic levels.
The hard part is this is a marathon.
Seattle's mayor says applications are up 300% since a new labor contract was finalized, but the city is competing for recruits with other major western cities like Portland, Los Angeles, Phoenix, and San Diego that are all understaffed, hit hard by retirements after the summer of 2020. Dominic Choi is the Los Angeles police chief.
What's the latest with your staffing?
NYPD is over 4 cops, 4.5, 4.7 cops per 1,000 people. Chicago PD is very similar, 4.2 or 4.5 cops for every 1,000 people. We are at roughly 2.1 cops for every 1,000 people.
Kettle says streamlining testing and building up police academy capacity are also concerns.
Is it perfect? No, but we're pressing on all fronts.
And it will continue to be highlighted with every passing day and every passing tragedy. Chris Daniels, KOMO News.
Seattle's mayor recently criticized the Public Safety Civil Service Commission that has refused to change the testing protocol for new recruits, saying it, quote, puts us at a significant disadvantage in the highly competitive police recruiting marketplace.
Tonight in the deep end, the Seattle Police Department projects it will lose more police officers this year than recruit new ones. Mary Nam joins me now and talk about some pretty surprising statistics here, Mary. The department is looking at a little less than 1,000 deployable officers by the end of this year.
That's right. Tonight I spoke with Chris Daniels about the struggles with recruitment and how Seattle isn't the only big city in the West Coast losing officers.
Mary, we received some new numbers today from the Seattle Police Department and also the city council acknowledging that even with all these changes in recruiting, the big bonuses that have been waved around for a while, the raise in base pay, that really it has not changed the trajectory at this point for recruiting new officers to the Seattle Police Department. And they're losing more officers than they're gaining at this point. And that's going to be the challenge here for the new police chief, the interim police chief, Sue Rahr. The numbers I was given by the city of Seattle is that there have been 40 separations through the end of May, meaning academy dropouts, field training dropouts, and retirements of fully trained officers. And at this point, through the end of May, they've only gained 15. So that means a loss there when you start talking about numbers of officers of 25, and given that the projections now from the city of Seattle is that there will be more separations before the end of the year than actual hires, that they are expecting the one number to be larger than the other, and that would then put the fully trained officers, so there's two numbers here, fully trained and deployable. Fully trained officers at 989, deployable at 918. Those two numbers obviously below the 1,000 officer mark. And as you and I have talked about many, many times before, this is a mayor and with elected officials now on the council who say the best number for Seattle is 1,400 officers. So there is a substantial difference there between 1,400 and 1,000 or less than 1,000. And it's going to be a real challenge, at least in the short term, to close that gap.
We're halfway through the year, Chris. It's the end of June, practically. City leadership continuing to remain optimistic for the rest of the year? Or are these numbers that something that they had anticipated? Or is this a sign that all of the measures, everything that they have thrown at this problem with recruiting officers is it a sign that it's not working?
Yeah, I think it's a little tough to gauge. I think we'll have a better gauge here in the next 6 months. But I would tell you, Mary, that this is a challenge for major cities across the country, and primarily in the western United States. I've looked into this. Phoenix is down several hundred officers. San Diego's down a couple hundred officers. LA's down a couple of hundred officers. Portland has one of the worst ratios of all major American cities. So it's a real challenge right now to recruit police officers who want to work in an urban environment. And the pay in Seattle and ratifying that contract, really the back pay for 3 years' time, is going to make Seattle more competitive. Seattle is going to have the lowest, or I should say, the highest starting pay for police officers in the state of Washington. So that's going to be helpful. But in terms of getting people through the academy, there is a story here about just the amount of space in the academy system as it exists right now, the expansion of it, so you can get new recruit classes in and get people trained faster. That's really a factor for policing across the state, but in the city of Seattle, where there's already a massive shortage, it becomes more troubling.
Right now, there's an interim police chief, a new interim police chief for Seattle Police. Um, Based on your observations, too soon to say, is it making a difference at all?
Yeah, she's only been in the role really for a few weeks, and she says, she's obviously Surar as the former King County sheriff. She says she's not going to do this for longer than 6 months. There's going to be a national search. She says that one of the things she wants to try and get up to speed, get going, is flexible scheduling. The idea that people who are trying to raise a family, who may be working in other departments, would come to Seattle and work as a part-time officer on, say, Fridays and Saturdays. That may be one way to staff up in a short amount of time, just bringing in a bunch of part-time officers. That's one of the ideas she has. She's got a few more months to work on that, but she said that's something that she would like to see implemented before she transitions out of that role and hands it off to somebody else.
So it sounds like they are at a point where they are essentially thinking outside the box to change this somehow.
They're thinking outside the box, and it also sounds like there was a bit of a setback. And you and I talked about this on KOMO on the air, and it gets a little into the weeds about if you aren't involved in policing, the testing procedures and the different types of tests that exist. There is a test that anybody coming into SPD would take right now. There's another test that people who are applying to other departments would take. That's the simplest way of saying it. And the community, the Public Safety Civil Service Commission, they call it PSCSC, and try and say that 5 times fast. They released a report last week saying they'd like to keep status quo with the tests that they take right now. There's a lot of acronyms, but the tests they take right now, they believe should stay in place. That upset the mayor, saying that he's extremely disappointed in that decision. It says they are in a public safety staffing crisis right now, that it does get into the weeds, but it helps to explain this whole issue of just how fast you can get people recruited and tested and through the academy. It seems like it is, at least on the surface, a hurdle for the Seattle Police Department in terms of moving forward.
All right, we'll see what happens as we move closer to the second half of the year. Chris Daniels, thank you very much.
You bet.
So Interim Chief Surar will continue to lead the department for the rest of the year. The hope is that come fall, the numbers will start to change, Steve.
We will certainly see. Mary, thank you.